think I need to be on the side because I got like glare goggles in my glasses.
Get in the middle, Oliver.
Get in the middle, Oliver.
This ain't my book review.
This ain't a grandma's book review. Hi everyone.
Hi.
We're Super Geeked, and this is the first book review we're doing for our book club. Our selection was...
That I'm not in.
You're in it. You're in it.
You're all up in it.
Nobody invited me.
You were so in it.
Hip deep.
No, this was a conversation between you two about a book you were going to read, and I was not invited.
You were in
That's
on
true.
the conversation.
No,
Yeah.
I wasn't.
You're sitting here.
I didn't get any of the texts.
We didn't. There were no text exchanges.
You just told me that y'all had a book club, and you even told me that you named it. What's the name of it?
Odd Tomes.
See, I didn't even know that.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's true. We kept you out of the loop.
I know. I'm trying to tell everybody that.
But we wanted to be sensitive because we both know that you can't read. So.
Speaking of, I just finished a book today when I was supposed to be cleaning the
God.
house.
You read Dick and Jane. I'm so happy for you. You finished it.
Actually,
Can you spell cat now?
I read Devil in the White City about H.H. Holmes and the World's Fair.
Yeah, you need a whole lot of Jesus. Anyway, our first...
Speaking of Jesus.
Yeah, speaking of Jesus, what is this book you read?
My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. The blurb is like an unholy hybrid of Beaches and The Exorcist. And I really couldn't put it any better than that.
That's
honestly.
right. That's a good way to put it.
It's the story of two best friends, and one weekend they're in the woods and decide to drop acid, and one of them gets possessed. And the story goes from there. It's set in the 80s, and it's a pretty good ride, I think. What do you think?
It's definitely a slow burn, which I like that in a book, though. It was a little disjointed for me as far as, being able to associate the same way as you did with the characters.
Why is that?
But because they're all female.
Not a teenage girl in the 80s.
Yeah. Oliver told me, he's like, yeah, I don't really get it because I've never been a teenage girl.
As far as the story goes, like I guess the point of possession or the point of contact was really creepy.
I was really frightened to read this. And to me, that was the scariest part.
Yeah.
When at the beginning of the story, when they're in the woods, one of the ladies or young girls is looking for her friend that's lost, and she's standing in front of an old abandoned house, and it's creepy. And the way it's described, it's that feeling we've all had at some point where you're somewhere and you're just afraid.
Mm-hmm.
That was the scariest part.
Stands up on the back of your
You can't explain it, but there's a deep dread. Yeah.
That was the scariest part to me. I was so afraid of the exorcism in the story that I was dreading that. I even took like a day or two off from reading because I just didn't want to get to it. I thought I would be so afraid, but the scariest part to me was in the woods.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I will say this. I was sort of disappointed with The Exorcism. I wanted more, considering that that's the title of the book. I expected it to be, just
horrifying.
Yeah, I wanted like, let's see how you can top The Exorcist. It's pretty horrific to me because there's documented cases of demon possession and things like that. So anything that can happen in reality is more frightening to me than, this killer that can't be killed and keeps coming back.
I think that's why this is my horror trope that I'm most scared of.
I get that.
I've had an exorcism.
It's true.
No, like seriously.
I know it's true. I'm saying it's true.
I shaved a mohawk and my mom took me to the Exorcist.
Without giving away any spoilers, the actual exorcism did kind of take, I would say, like a Disney turn.
It really did.
At the end.
I was very disappointed with that, I will say.
Now, it was endearing, but it was not at all what I was expecting.
Right. I was a little bit disappointed. The horror fan in me was disappointed with that. I wanted more out of that. Even though I love the characters, I did genuinely love the characters. I grew to love them, even though as we discussed earlier, I felt a little voyeuristic with reading this because I'm like, I don't know if I should be reading about teenage girls, you know. So it was a little strange, but I found myself when you get to the point in the book where she's trying to get help, and she's trying to tell all the adults, her teachers, even the priest at the school that they go to, what's going on. No one believes her, and that was one of the cool things, is because the Satanic Panic of the 80s that's exactly what was going on at the time.
See, I was too young, but they mentioned the Geraldo special, and I don't know if that was a real thing or not.
That was a real thing, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I stopped reading when it got to that special, and they're talking so much about it in the book on the bus on the way to the
Anatomy lab.
Yeah, the anatomy lab. The medical examiner was doing a tour. It was something that was required at their school for 10th graders, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, they talk about the Geraldo special, and I vaguely remembered that as a kid. And I went back. You can actually go on YouTube and watch that special. And I watched it, and I was like, it's like an hour and a half or something like that. I watched the entire thing.
I've never watched any Geraldo. Now, I've heard about
Really?
Hitler's bunker, but
Geraldo did a thing on Straight Edge too.
Well, I think when I was little, Sally Jesse was still on, and Ricky Lake was on, but Geraldo, I don't think he was on, and that was when Jerry Springer started to come on too. So
Gail's the baby of the group. We're all old.
But yeah, Grady Hendrix really hit the nail on the head with the Satanic Panic, and he even did a chapter about it in his other book that I have, Paperbacks from Hell, because that was a big thing with the books that were being written at the time too. People were really capitalizing on the coattails of The Exorcist.
Yeah. They were talking about a pastor who had all these pamphlets out talking about the Satanic Panic and warning signs to look for. That was based on an actual pastor. And his name was Bob Larson. If you ever went to a church where they said, we're going to watch these videos, kids, sit down, and it was like, all the reasons why you shouldn't listen to rock and roll music, he was at the forefront of that, and that was his thing. He had these specials like, stay away from rock and roll, it's the devil's music. And
I can certainly relate, because you and I both grew up in small towns, Southern Baptist, AF.
Yeah, AF. Bob Larson even had, he had videoed exorcisms. He had one of those deliverance services where people would come that were demon possessed, and I don't know how you drag a demon possessed person to attend. To say, hey, come on out to this revival meeting. We're going to cast them devils right out of you. But he did stuff like that. And I hate to say it like this, but he totally capitalized on the Satanic Panic of the 80s.
Well, that was another thing that I thought of when I was reading was the Bakers and the other televangelist scandals that came. I mean, there were multiple ones in the 80s. And I was listening to a podcast the other day about Tony Lama and the Music City Church. That group on Death in the Afternoon is the podcast that Caitlin from Ask a Mortician does. So that's one to check out for sure. You had told me that you were really creeped out by the part where all the birds are flying into the windows. Yeah. And I couldn't help but think about Twin Peaks. The owls are not what they seem. And also another movie I'd seen years ago called The Fourth Kind about alien encounters. And they take place in Nome, Alaska, and there's something in the film is mentioned about owls, and it's just funny that, well, not funny, but strange that all these other birds are flying into the window, and then these owls come up and are tearing the birds apart. And, in Christianity, we have things like doves are a symbol, so I thought that was really, a lot of symbolism going on.
There was a lot of symbolism in that.
I had a childhood friend who said that in their family, if someone heard the screech owl, it was a foretelling of that person's death, kind of like the ticking of a death beetle. That's something that kind of
that's freaky.
That's a Native American lore thing right there. I remember hearing that also.
Oh, what about the ending?
I cried because I thought of you, because the friendship is so strong, and that really I've been dying to ask you, if your best friend was possessed, what would you help them? I mean, how far would you go?
She risked everything. She certainly did, because she was like, at one point she knew, she's like, I'm gonna go to jail. I'm not, my life is pretty much over.
She had lost her school, her family,
Yep.
and was headed to the jailhouse.
Yep.
If I was possessed, would you save me?
Duh. I'd go down that hole with you.
But
Let's get possessed together.
it's also important to point out, though, that it's one thing when an adult says, I'd risk everything for you. But we're talking about these young ladies are teenagers. They've got their whole life ahead of them, and to say that I'm going to ruin the rest of my life just to free you from this bondage that you're in.
Just to try.
Yeah, just to try. I don't know if I'm going to be successful. I'm going to try it, though. That's incredible. I mean, for an adult to say it to another adult, that's one thing. But when you have these teenagers, these young people that are saying, yeah, I'll risk my entire future for you, that's friendship.
Oh, going back to the Geraldo thing, the reason I realized reading this that I was so afraid of possession, there's been like levels in my life, but it started with Unsolved Mysteries.
Oh, I used to love that show.
I remembered an episode that I saw of Unsolved Mysteries where a woman knew she was possessed because she looked in the mirror and she did not recognize herself, and they were not her eyes looking back at her. And that has stayed with me all these years. So that was the seed that was planted to make Gaela so afraid of this horror trope.
That's amazing.
It took reading this book to remember that. Isn't it funny?
I was so obsessed with that show that I created my own mystery group. It was called the Mystery Busters. And I still have, Josh will tell you, I still have like this book that I made where we were solving mysteries, and like I have like evidence that I collected, and like there's like receipts for like things that we collected. I don't know, I was 7, but I was obsessed with that show. I was a weird kid.
So a lot of the themes that I saw in this book were like the have and have nots. That was a pretty prevalent theme.
Absolutely.
Because, the main character, Abby, all her friends are affluent, wealthy. They all go to this private school, and she's there on a scholarship. And I feel like it really resonated with the consumerism of the 80s and that opulent kind of culture that you saw on shows like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous with Robin Leach, R.I.P.
That's one thing I loved about Bret Easton Ellis novels, is he really, really dialed in on the rampant consumerism and the sort of the debaucherous nature and how destroying that was, with mostly Wall Street and things like that. If you've read American Psycho, it's all about Wall Street, and how decadent that had become because of that rampant consumerism. But I got that too. That was concurrent through the whole entire thing. Like you said, the haves and have-nots, because her parents were busting their butts just to send her to this private school, and she drove an old beater, where everybody else were kids of privilege. Mm-hmm. So,
was there anything from the high school experience in this book that resonated with your own high school experience at all?
No.
Nothing at all?
It really didn't, because I went to a school full of have-nots. He was really, really rich in the 80s culture. It was so thick through the whole story, and it was sort of nostalgic for me. A lot of it was all about the
strongest part where that came through for me was when it was describing Abby's bedroom. Like, I could see it. Mm-hmm. It was so 80s.
The Mickey Mouse phone.
The Mickey Mouse phone, the red metal bed with the curved back.
What was your overall take on the book? Like,
overall take, not as scary as I thought it would be. And I've seen a lot of people describe this as a horror comedy, and I wouldn't go that far. It didn't seem all that funny to me. My biggest issue, dead babies. Don't like that in books.
Yeah, that was rough. The dead babies was...
Fewer dead babies would make this book just about perfect.
Fewer dead babies. That was definitely horrific. I didn't like the ending. I didn't like the way it ended. I was disappointed. It left me wanting a lot more. I'm talking about the Exorcism. The actual ending itself was sweet, but I was just like...
See, I feel like if it was a movie and it ended that way, it would be good.
Yeah. But you're right. It did sort of take a Disneyland, sort of a Disneyland approach to Exorcism.
The Exorcism ended that way. Now
Yeah.
the actual book was like a Steel Magnolias kind of ending
Right.
that had me boohooing into my book pages.
But that I guess that's what I'm referring to. It's not necessarily the ending, but just the exorcism.
Yeah.
I was really excited about the exorcism, especially when it got to the point. And you know, another thing too that's funny is like that power team that they talk about in here. That was an actual thing.
Oh, yeah.
You had these bodybuilders that would go around and tear phone books in half and say,
Lifting
"I
for
do this
Jesus."
for Jesus." So yeah, I mean that was a legitimate thing.
My favorite thing was the Easter egg for S-Mart.
Oh yeah,
That was the most wonderful little nugget.
Shop smart, shop S-Mart. I love that. I love that they mentioned S-Mart in there.
It's just a one-liner, like I'd rather not be working at S-Mart, or just an offhanded remark. But if you know what S-Mart is,
That's right.
and you were reading this book, you'd be like,
that,
I was.
Yeah,
I texted him.
Yeah.
I had to stop and text Holly, like, did you see that?
It was a throwaway line that if you weren't paying attention or weren't a fan, you would have totally missed it. But yeah, so Evil Dead fans, check that out.
Now, I have read another one of his books, and it was really good. So I think if Grady Hendrix were to put out more books, I would go on to read them. And I would recommend this. Absolutely. It's just not... It's not what I expected. It's not what you expected. So go into it without any expectations, for sure.
I don't know that I would recommend it, but I didn't hate it. Like the book through, like I say, it was a slow burn build of the horror, and it had its creepy moments like we talked about. But I wouldn't say that I would. I'm glad I read it, but I don't know that I would recommend it. Read more books. Horror books keep America strong.
Really?
To quote John Waters, if you go to someone's house and they don't have any books, don't boop them.
Agreed. Thank you for sticking around for the video. Please, leave us comments down below if you would.
If you have any recommendations for books that they could read,
We're all
and
ears.
me if I'm invited, then put it below, because we'd like to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely.
And if you have read this, we would love to know what you thought.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what people's thoughts are on this as well.
Don't forget to subscribe, like this video.
And
We'll see you next time.
Stay tuned for more.
Bye.